started recording then, and I can edit some of this, maybe. We'll see if I just
matter.
put it up, because
But
let's be honest, this is how our conversations go anyway.
I think this is going to be a better way of doing our conversations.
Unedited videos in the dark, or reviews in the dark.
Well, people like unedited sometimes.
That's true.
Which is why live is so popular.
Yeah. But because everybody these days like does so much to get rid of the weird spaces in between, like those pauses and stuff.
Yeah, but the constant looking and like I think this will be better.
All right. Well, hi.
Hello, everybody.
We've got a fun new setup where we're gonna actually be able to look at each other and talk, and you guys think we're still looking at you on the camera and talking, but
looking at you, looking at me, looking at you.
Now back to me again.
Now back to me.
Old Spice. So we've decided that we're going to start recording some of our conversations when it comes to our reviews, reactions to things. We tend to talk a lot about the things that we recently watched. Usually, before recent circumstances, we would go to the movies twice a month, and on the way home from the theater, which was about 45 minutes, we would talk the whole way.
And still have more to say.
And still have more to say about the movie that we just saw.
To the point where we'd be lying in bed and be like, shh, one of us is just too tired. We'll talk more tomorrow.
Yeah. So we thought, it'd be fun if we actually started recording some of our reactions and reviews. And the idea that we had was that on the way home from the theater, we'll record ourselves like on our phone or something. And that's why it would be Reviews in the Dark.
Because you can't see nothing in the car. It was always pitch black coming home, so.
So it'd be Reviews in the Dark. So welcome to the premiere episode of Reviews in the Dark with Carly and Jason.
And we were going to do this last night, but I had to work today, and we were too tired. It was too late.
So to preface a little bit of that as well, we watched the first 2 episodes of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Awesome show.
Do you want to give initial thoughts, and then we'll break into things we like, things we didn't like, criticisms we hear or disagree with.
I mean, I think we tend to do that anyway. We don't necessarily need a structure to follow. We just kind of do it.
Okay, I suppose. But I would say my initial thoughts are, I really like the show.
Yes.
Now, we were watching it again today, just passing around dinner time. We just finished episode 1 for the second time. We haven't watched episode 2 again. Mm-hmm. And I will say, the first episode a second time feels slower.
Maybe.
I enjoyed it a lot more the first time. I still really like it. That's not to say I don't like it. But I understand a little bit more of the criticism, because the first time around I'm trying to piece it all together. I'm like, what's this and what's that? And this, that, and the other. So it didn't feel as slow because my mind was already working. This time around, I already knew what was coming, so I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I remember that, I remember this, and all that kind of stuff.
And I was trying to pick out little details.
This is not, going off of that, this is not a show that I feel like that has rewatchability the next day. You know me, I love to rewatch things. They become my comfort. They're basically my comfort food, is rewatching shows and to have as background noise.
And I am not.
And you are not.
I do not really rewatch. If I rewatch something, it's usually because I absolutely love it. Mm-hmm. Or I just happen to be in the mood. Other than that, I don't just turn stuff on to rewatch.
You absorb and contain, I think, better than I do.
I retain a lot. I can, even in high school, I could read something once, and I could tell you basically from start to finish. I have a pretty decent memory in that way. Now, there are things I miss and stuff, because, I'm not perfect, but...
That's not to say I don't remember things. I tend to just remember the very big things.
Yeah.
So I enjoy rereading, rewatching, because it's those little things that I'm like, oh, and especially when it comes to foreshadowing stuff, I'm like, oh, I see it now. Yeah. That's fun for me. But this show is not something that you can rewatch really the next day, because granted, it may have been a little bit slow, but that's how starting things usually are. I didn't want to get into this episode and have the first thing be a ginormous explosion and
I didn't need
stuff
it
like
I didn't
that.
Need it to kick off.
It doesn't need to be action packed. which I feel like too many people
So
are complaining about that.
Criticism that the internet is making is it's too slow, right?
Yes.
But to the Tolkien fans who come to their defense, which I agree with, is that Tolkien is slow. If you read his book, if you watch the movies, heck, Peter Jackson's extended versions, which are arguably a little more faithful, that tone is Tolkien. He just is slower.
That's not it's not a bad slow though.
Yes.
It's an appropriately paced build up.
Kind of like as if you would say, that went fast. Now you can say that went fast as in, I wanted more, it went too fast, or that went fast as in, I had so much fun with that time flew by.
See, Maverick for me is a fast-paced show or movie.
Yeah.
But it needed to be because of what the story was supposed to be. He is a fighter pilot, and those things go fast. The story's naturally going to be fast. This is a fantasy that stretches over centuries.
But he, Top Gun Maverick is also not a short movie.
No.
It's actually relatively long in comparison.
Yeah.
But in that vein, getting back to topic, like the Lord of the Rings, I can understand the criticism of it being slow, but I think it's actually more appropriate for the show.
Exactly. It's an epic. Even though these were short books, this is an epic in a way because it spans centuries of characters dealing with things.
And
I mean, the war itself was centuries long.
And it's technically not even the beginning.
No, it's not.
It's the second age. So lots of stuff happens in the first age, which I argue can never be done. It's too ethereal, too biblical, too
the fact that they fight with songs.
Yeah, they fight with songs. It's weird. So I think jumping to the second age is the right decision.
Yes. I like that we got to see what it looked like before, though. We got to see an older city. We got to see her as a kid. Yeah. We got to see the trees. That was awesome.
So I like Galadriel's voiceover. That's the word I'm looking for. I like her voiceover at the beginning. One, because it echoes the Lord of the Rings, where you get her voiceover. But two, it allows us to, as you said, kind of live in the first age for just a little bit.
Just enough.
To be like, this is what it was like, even though a great battle and everything happened in the first age. But it allowed us to experience, okay, this is where the elves are coming from. But also allowed us to establish Galadriel as a character.
Yes.
And I was briefly mentioning, I was trying really hard not to make comments last night. Didn't happen very well.
We ended up making a few comments to each other.
Yeah.
We refrained enough. We have plenty to talk about still.
But something that I will re-mention is I think this show did an excellent job of establishing the characters, who they are, where they're coming from, like that particular character's point of view, and what their goal is in mind. And like, so you really understand, okay, you're this character type. You're that character type. And I pointed out Celebrimbor. Technically, we only get a few minutes with Celebrimbor.
Oh, yeah.
But immediately in that one scene, or his second scene, because he shows up with...
he shows up at first when they're talking... Yeah.
He's like, hello, and he just kind of smiles. But then you have that second scene where he's actually talking to Elrond, which is probably my favorite scene. Well, that, and there's another one.
Yeah.
But, it's a short scene. But you immediately understand where Celebrimbor's coming from. You're like, oh, you have an ego.
Yes.
And you're just fed up with everybody talking about, I think his name is Finrod, the guy who made the Silmarils. It's like, you're just like, oh, great artist from...
Is Finrod or Feanor the older brother?
I think it's I don't know. It's hard to keep track of all the
Antidepressant or Tolkien name.
Yeah, antidepressant or Tolkien name. You decide.
So going off of that, though, when he's talking about this previous smith, the way he just casually picks up this hammer, this artifact, right? This beautiful thing as well. He just casually picks it up and talks about it and, like, wipes off, like, a smudge and then puts it back. And I'm like, dude.
But you can tell the disdain. He's like, he's so sick of people talking about how great he was. He's
It's like being compared to your older sibling who had all the honors in school, right?
Which I don't know the relations very well, but I would be willing to bet they're related in some way, or at least he taught Celebrimbor or something to that effect. Because there are basically only two, to my knowledge, there are only two great smiths in all of Elven lore, which is whoever that first one is. I want to say it's Finrod. I don't know. Maybe you look it up while I'm talking.
I'm gonna Google it.
And then there's Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor, who makes the rings. And then the first one, who made the Silmarils. So kind of having your archetypes, because you have Morgoth, who Galadriel talks about, who is basically Sauron.
Feanor made the Silmarils, yeah.
Feanor made...
Finrod's her older brother, I'm pretty sure.
Finrod, okay. Or, I don't know, whatever.
Feanor, though.
I'll get the names better,
yeah.
But Feanor. Right?
Yes, yep.
Feanor made the Silmarils,
which is a whole interesting story.
Yeah, it is. But it basically becomes the ring for Sauron. Like, you can see the comparisons, right? You have a Dark Lord from the First Age who had this magical item, the Silmarils. And there was 3 of them. And he had them, and he blah, blah, blah. They're kind of changing the story a little bit. There was no tear or anything, but... and then you have Sauron, who had the one ring. And both of those items kind of became the downfall of the Dark Lord, blah, blah, blah.
Sure, yep.
But, getting back to topic, is Celebrimbor, who's like, everybody's always talking about Feanor and his magical Silmarils, and they were so great. And he's
like, I make great stuff too.
Yeah. He's just like, but I will make something, and you mentioned this, of power.
Yeah, he specifically uses the word power, and I was like, I see what you did there.
That will change this world.
Yes.
Like, he's like, forget the world of the past. I'm making the world of the future.
Yep.
And so you can just see his arrogance, his disdain, and so immediately in this 2 to 3 minute scene, you know who Celebrimbor is.
And compared to the reverence that Elrond had when he was looking at the hammer, he didn't touch it. He was just examining it, and he's like, this is so amazing. Oh. He was like a little bit of a fangirl thing going on, and it was pretty cute. But
be honest though, so the shot opens on the hammer. I'm like, ooh.
Yes, both of us were like, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, it was great.
It's like, I want that.
I was
like,
can I get
there's
a replica of that?
Yeah, there's so many things in the show that I'm like, I want that and probably that too, and then all of it. But it was great because I like that they kind of messed with us in this scene. He's like, okay, so Elrond's basically like, so what are we making? He's like, and I've already decided what we're making.
Pulls out this design, and you know the audience is immediately thinking, the rings.
Yeah.
He's like, no, the forge.
Yes.
Which I thought was a really great way to go.
Yes. And it was... If I don't know if any people who are going to watch this have played the Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor games.
Which are great.
But your resurrection points in those games are towers. And so it made me think of that. I don't know if they're meant to be the same thing.
I don't think so. I think those towers are also a little bit reminiscent of who's the elf in the town with the lady? You're better with names.
Arondir.
Arondir.
I'm pretty sure that's his name.
Arondir's going to the Watchtower.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Might have been Watchtowers,
They kind of remind me of those Watchtowers.
Yeah.
But the Forge, immediately when he shows the design...
Which was a great design, by the way. Like, even just the brief shot you get of the Forge design, I'm like, ooh, that's pretty. I like it.
And the way he describes it, will be as hot as the flame from the tongue of a dragon or something like that.
And as
pure as the light from stars, something like that.
Stars or sun, but it was one of those sources. But they tend to have a thing more for the stars than they do the sun, so I'm more along the lines of pure light of starlight.
Yeah. So the description,
very poetic.
Very Tolkien. Tolkien was very poetic in the way he described things.
But also plays into that ego that Celebrimbor has. Like, he
Yeah.
would describe it this way. He would not describe it any other way.
And just imagining, so obviously we're getting into spoilers, but
Oh yeah, no, this
So-
whole thing is spoilers. So
But-
if you haven't seen the episode, don't be here.
the lore is that Sauron, who in the show is described as cunning, which is great, because I want to see him trick everyone, pull the wool over everyone's eyes, which we'll get into. I think he's already doing.
I want him to pull the wool over our eyes too. I don't want to know who is Sauron until he reveals himself to them.
We're gonna have to know.
I don't know.
Pretty darn soon.
I don't know. I feel like they can leave us guessing. Give us 2 or 3 people who it might be.
Maybe. So
Anyway.
we'll get into it in a minute.
Okay.
So Sauron, who's described as cunning, a sorcerer, and they use crafty, I think, something. I don't know. They use 2 words, and then it's
Yeah.
cunning, something, and then sorcerer. But I want to see him fool everybody.
Yes.
And the lore is that he does. He comes to the elven people as the bearer of great gifts in his fair form. So, very beautiful, very elven-esque. And basically he's like, Celebrimbor, bet you could make something nice and special for me. And he convinces Celebrimbor to make the rings. So I think we have to know sooner rather than later, because basically anybody who brings up the ring or rings becomes an immediate suspect. That guy might be Sauron.
Yeah.
So I think knowing sooner than later will be helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, you can build tension in that way where it's like, no, the bad guy's in there. Don't go in there. Or it's like, the bad guy just told you to do this. Don't do it. But also, that's the one thing we know that's going to happen, right? The rings will be made, and Sauron will make his one ring. Which I think, they haven't told us yet, but I think then Sauron needs to be a major character. I think we actually need to see a lot from his point of view, etc.
I mean, if you think about it, in the movies, he wasn't actually a main character. He was
not.
just the mysterious bad guy.
Yeah, but I think here he needs to be. So, because also, I don't know if they'll get into this, but I think it's a lost opportunity if they don't. First age is Morgoth. Sauron was one of his generals. They don't even tell us in the lore, because Tolkien doesn't get into it. We don't know if he was his right-hand man, or if he was just... we know he was high up there, but we don't know where he stood.
I think it'll... If anybody's going to interpret it in any way, it'll probably be as close to a right-hand man as you can get.
I think that's the but power struggles are a thing.
Yeah.
And so, when someone's like, hey, the boss is gone, I'm taking over, there's going to be other people who are like, oh, no.
No, you're not. That's me.
I'm taking over.
Yeah.
So, it would be interesting to see...
That's where the conference meeting came from afterward. He just defeated all the other guys who were trying to get the power. Now he's walking in.
So the meeting where he walks in, he's like, all right, boys, we're gathered here today to say I'm in charge.
It's so funny.
Now, and they're like, who is this guy? Have you guys even met this guy?
It's from the when Galadriel's doing her voiceover and she talks specifically about Sauron and he's walking into this crowd of orcs.
It's when they describe him as crafty, etc. And he just walks into this crowd of
people
orcs.
have been memeing it.
But I think that could be interesting because the rings could be a way for Sauron to solidify his power against would-be takers, but also to show I am the what do you call it when someone succeeds someone else?
I am Groot.
I am Groot. But
whatever that is.
yeah, the heir apparent. He
there
is
you go.
The heir apparent to Morgoth.
Yeah.
And I think some of that's going to come in where it's like we even see them mention when Galadriel goes up to the northern fortress. It's like they're messing with the magics of the unseen. So
the unseen world, which is specifically on the flip side when Frodo uses the ring, he enters the unseen world.
Yeah, and so that's where the wraiths kind of mostly dwell. They can see in the unseen world, but also in Tolkien magicness, there's really only seen and unseen. And so they're messing with what I would describe as the dark side.
Sure.
Like, and I think once Sauron's like, look, I've totally got this figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And something they don't really get into, but I think this is also a first age thing, I'm fairly certain. So Morgoth, I don't think could really create anything. He could just distort. So he took the elves, which were a creation of one of the Valar, which are the kind of the angel creatures, like Gandalf and stuff.
Yeah, there's like the Maiar and the Valar.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the hierarchy. It's too confusing.
Yeah.
I'm
not a Tolkien professor.
It's hard to keep track of. There's a lot in there.
Yes.
But so he took the elves and distorted them into orcs.
Yeah, the first orcs.
I think they're going to say this is a Sauron thing. Because you have the orc kind of in the wall in the northern fortress.
Yeah.
And they're like, ooh, they're messing with the powers of the unseen world. Well, I don't think Sauron's point was to kind of meld him to the wall. I don't think that was the point.
No.
But you could see the focus was on, because they mentioned pointy ears, we've had the elves, blah, 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 show me your ears. The focus is on the ears, so I don't think they know that orcs come from elves. And I think we're going to have...
She does mention something about the creation of them in her voiceover. She does mention them, and then how they start to breed uncontrollably, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But it might be another one of Sauron's claims to fame, right? He's like, oh, well, he's taking our brethren, our dead, or whatever, and twisting them into these. Maybe. So orcs, as I understand it, originally in the First Age, cannot withstand sunlight. Which seems
to burn their skin.
Yeah, which they seem to be carrying over in here because they're burrowing underground. They have lots of coverings and stuff.
That was the thing about the Uruk-hai, and they even mentioned this in the Peter Jackson films, is that the Uruk-hai it doesn't bother them at all. Right. So that's what made them even more dangerous. Yeah. They were all not only physically bigger and stronger and all of that, but they could go in the day.
Yeah, anytime, anywhere.
Yeah.
But
whereas these current orcs in the show are kind of skinny and like zombie-ish and just very grotesque.
So maybe that's what Sauron's doing, is perfecting Uruk-hai. And I still think, I'm going to hold to this for now, I think it has to do with elves. Yeah. And I think just because of the way the shot was framed, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think it's going to be that. It's going to be Sauron's messing with elves, and he's figured out how to get orcs to go anywhere. He's discovered how to make Uruk-hai. And yeah, that was really great.
I mean, it made me think, so the thing about the unseen world too, and the way that orc was melded into the wall, he's trying to gain access to it, and maybe the first attempt kind of sent the body too far into the unseen world, and so then he just went through the wall and got stuck when he started to shift back into the seen world, because Frodo does disappear from sight, but he can still interact with the surroundings in the unseen world.
Yeah, he's kind of in between.
Yeah, so it's like out of phase, essentially.
Yeah.
So maybe this first attempt of going out of phase just wasn't quite right, so he, got stuck in the wall. Like, I mean, I'm thinking of, like, happens in Star Trek episodes plenty of times where people are getting stuck in the walls. So it could have been his first attempt of somehow accessing the unseen world.
So, I will say the first episode, really good. Going north to the northern fortress was really good.
Which, we'll get into that too, how that deals with Sauron's craftiness.
And in the second episode, we learned that Halbrand, I think his name is, on the ship, she kept asking him, where are your people from? How did orcs wipe you out? Where is this town?
Yeah.
And he said, to the south.
I am from the Southlands.
And so immediately, I was just like, that is so... What a clever little mix.
Yeah, and
Sauron...
You see it on her face. She's like, I've been going the wrong direction the entire time.
Yeah, and so he's just like, oh, you're going north? Fine, I'm going to go south.
Yeah.
And to me, at least, for now, it shows that Sauron is 10 steps ahead. You're going to go that way? I'm going to go this way. But I liked it. I liked the look of the Northern Fortress. I did
Probably
not
need to
like.
shut that door. Yeah.
I did not like the. I did not like the jump on the sword. I thought that was a little corny, and they kind of have these moments throughout Lord of the Rings where it is these little corny moments. You have Legolas who like skateboards down the steps, and then you have there's another one. In The Hobbit, there's kind of like the doors form like these step stools and stuff, and so they're jumping on them. It's stupid. So I didn't like the jump with the blade. It is fine.
I mean, I am mostly okay with that. I have a feeling that Throndir is that bratty little snot who threw rocks at Galadriel's boat when they were kids.
Could be.
But even though they have that kind of bashing of heads, they have respect for each other and are that in sync that he's like, I know you need to go high. Jump off the sword.
Well, and I like there's a quote from something recently. It's when a bunch of good men. Oh, what is it?
I'm pulling it up now. It's a Dalinar quote.
Oh yes, Dalinar from the Stormlight Archive, Brandon Sanderson books. We love them to death. Has a quote. It's like when you train your men well, and when they go contrary to your orders, it's time for you to like reevaluate your orders or something like that. I basically took that Galadriel moment as that.
Yeah, so all of her people were like, then you will go alone. Every single one of them.
Because she could have, and I actually expected, the first time we watched this, I expected her to be like, okay, the next scene is going to be her alone.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, she went back. And so I took that as a Dalinar moment where she's like, okay, if all of my men are saying that you're wrong, I still don't believe I'm wrong, but I at least need to go back for them.
I'll have to find that quote later and maybe put it in the description.
It's a great quote.
Yeah. It's from the most recent book.
So there was that. The Elvish cities, both in the first age and in the second age, are gorgeous. The two trees are gorgeous.
Yes. Oh man. I was a little bit sad that the close up of the trees was the only 2 seconds we were really close, and then all we saw was their shattering. All that stuff.
Gil-galad the king, I think, is good. You mentioned you hate the sideburns. You don't like that all the elves have no sideburns. It seems to work on Elrond, but it doesn't work for anybody else.
I think it's because he has the eye to his mouth, because your ears start where your eyes line up and your ears end where your mouth lines up, and he's got just slightly less
because he's
space.
got a mega square jaw.
Yes, and so his ears are a little bit smaller, so his hair goes down a little bit lower. But everybody else's, I'm just like, why? Why?
It is weird.
Yes.
Oh man. Let's see. My second favorite moment out of both episodes. So my first one is probably the Celebrimbor one. It's so good.
But also, like I said when we were rewatching it today, when Celebrimbor first walks down towards where Elrond and Gil-galad are talking, Elrond goes like, he kind of does like this little small smile, and I was like, that's the closest you're ever going to get to an elf going, ah! Yeah.
But my second favorite moment is the conversation that Elrond and Galadriel have in the forest where their fallen are is so good. So good. The writing on that was great.
It was a real conversation
between friends. It wasn't I'm going to convince you, you're going to convince me. And they tried to understand one another, but they were harsh with one another, but not in a way that it was trying to offend. Fine.
They were just trying to attack each other. I feel like, yes, they were trying to understand each other, but at the same time try to be like, you're making the wrong choice. It was a bit of tough love in a way. It's like, I love you, you are my best friend, but you're being dumb. And both of them were saying that to each other.
And it was great.
And they did hear each other, even though they didn't change their minds. They
Yeah.
did hear what the other was saying.
Well, I would argue that Elrond got through.
Yeah, he did.
Um,
Because, I mean, she got on the boat.
yeah. And because he made a great point. He said, fine. And I actually do this quite often. I was like, let's assume that you're right. I've actually tried this on my boss. Let's
Let's not go there.
not go there. I was like, let's assume that you're right. And evil is out there.
Mm-hmm.
What then? Would you lead hundreds, thousands more of your kin to their death, fill up this forest just to prove that you're right? Because he also followed that up with, if you're right, I'm not going anywhere, and I will make every effort.
Yeah, it's not like she was just abandoning the world with
Yeah.
nobody to keep track of it, but she thinks that she is the best one for the job.
It has to be me.
Yeah.
And so...
But I mean, I can understand that feeling.
Yeah.
A lot, actually. I've been in situations where I mean, even for as dumb things as, like, folding the laundry, it's like, I'm the best one for the job. It's
And
a little
she doesn't like when I do it.
It's a little bit of a pride thing in a way, and so for her though, she's like, I've been doing this for centuries. I'm really good at this. I am the best at this. And Elrond's like, you don't have to be.
She's also one of the oldest.
She is.
She
still remembers the light of the trees on her face.
She's like, they don't show it very well because the elves' looks are kind of all over the place. But she is like to the point where Elrond, who is also old, is not nearly as old as Galadriel. Because he's like, what was it like? That's right, because you were born here.
Yep.
I was born there centuries, millennia ago. And so, like, I would argue probably her entire company is younger than she is. Most everyone that Galadriel meets is younger than she is.
So maybe Throndir isn't the snot, but
Maybe not. We don't know.
I feel like he could be, because I'm curious.
He's
It's
got
like
one of those faces.
what happened to those other kids that were there? I'm a little curious where they ended up. Maybe they already went to the Grey Havens.
Yeah. Or they died. Maybe they were part
Or
of the
they died.
trees.
Maybe,
Because
yeah.
thousands of people died.
That is gorgeous, by the way. What a beautiful way of memorializing these soldiers who have died. Like, not only are the statues beautiful and gorgeous, but just the way that the whole trees are lit up. Just, I love elvish stuff.
It is pretty
I
great.
love it.
So, talking about elvish stuff, going to the next company, but also the next complaint of the internet, is the Harfoots. I understand not wanting hobbits in here, and I don't care what the showrunners say. Harfoots are hobbits.
Yes.
They're essentially the same. Yes, they're nomadic and they don't have a home. They're a little more dirty. They don't necessarily focus on meals as much.
Well,
They're
and
the same.
people were expecting this level of sophistication that we had with the hobbits. The hobbits were very industrial people, even though they didn't necessarily have machinery and stuff,
I
but
don't
they
know if
had
industrious is the word I'd use.
well, they had fine tailored clothing, they had well established homes. That's industrious to me.
Sure.
Whereas the Harfoots are, I mean, think about the way our world progressed. We had, stick huts and stuff, and now we have houses. Like, times have changed. So I am fine with these precursors to hobbits being more earthy people.
So, regardless of if it's a precursor to the hobbits,
Which I think they are, considering Brandy Foot.
yeah.
Anyway.
Either way, the characters are good.
Yes.
Nori's pretty good. Poppy's pretty good. Those are the only two names I can remember, but the rest of them are really good.
Malva's the really annoying one who's like, this stuff's happening again. She was the one who's always walking around with the old man.
Soak, I think is the name, is the old...
Sorak.
Sorak. He's like, they're all...
Yes.
Like, the character work is good.
Yes.
And you don't need long, as I mentioned with Celebrimbor, to understand this is the character that you are. This is the character that you are. And it was so good.
I quite enjoyed them. I thought I wasn't going to like them a whole lot because, I mean, I liked the way the hobbits were with their fine suits and all of that. While some of them were a little bit stuck up. It was.
I relate to a hobbit. I'm like, when's my next meal?
Yes, and their food and their parties, they're just a happy people.
I like dressing up, and so like hobbits to me, I'm like, yes, I'm a hobbit at heart.
But these Harfoots, I didn't expect to like them as much as I did. Like, they are a happy, close-knit. Sure, there's some gripes here and there, but they're really just a large family, and I was so fascinated by like the ingenuity of the way their house is like all rolled up, like all the unveilings of what they did. I was like, oh, that is so fun. And even Nori's dad, who's like, might have been her dad, it might have been somebody else, but whoever popped up in the field 5 feet behind the hunters, and he's just kind of like, you guys don't know nothing. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh.
But it very cleverly used nature as like animals do, right? To hide, and it's like, I'm right here, you'd never know it.
Yes.
And so, very well done.
Yes.
I quite like them.
And
are they my favorite? No. But I think they add to the story. I think they add to the world, because the world is not made up of elves and dwarves. Mm-hmm. There are more creatures and more beings and more others out there who are going to be different, who are going to be odd, who are going to have different ways of doing things. And it's okay to have this different variety of halflings out there, and I'm fine with that.
And it's not like they were like gross or anything. They're just, they live in the woods. They're kind of dirty.
What you gonna do?
Whatever.
If you're a nomadic people who live out of the woods, you're gonna be like that.
But what I love was that they have compassion and empathy. And
they were
while they're essentially terrified of everything, Nori, being a little bit more adventurous than the others, she's like, we care. That is who we are, is we care. So when Meteor Man had the problem, she's like, I have to. Like, we care.
This is who we are. Well, which is why I think it was so easy for her to convince Poppy, right? Because Poppy was like, this is so wrong. We keep to our own. She's like, yes, but as our own, we take care of one another.
Yeah, and so Poppy, while
she's
Poppy's
like, am
probably...
I just supposed to walk away? And while Poppy was like, well, yeah. She's like, how, like... But that conflicts with like who we are. We don't just walk away.
Yeah. I think Poppy was a great example of how really actually anybody would be seeing somebody who had fallen from the sky and survived, but also
Poppy was also a nice window into this is how the rest of the Harfoots think. Mm-hmm. So, the rest of them are, nope, not doing that. Nope, I'm staying here. So
but when you appeal to their sense of compassion, they're going to come through.
Let's see. Leading us to the dwarves in episode 2.
Sure.
So good. The dwarf music, I would argue, is probably the best music we've had yet in the show.
Very dwarfy.
Very dwarfy.
Deep beats, just thrums, and it was
good.
I wanted so much more of Khazad-dûm, and I understand why we didn't, because the story was then about Durin and Elrond's conversation, but I wanted so much more to see it.
But I thought that whole Elrond going into Khazad-dûm, that whole thing was structured great. We get he's going there, and we get the intricate doors. We're like, yep, that's Dwarven.
Yep.
But then he goes in, and we get our first introduction into Khazad-dûm / culture, where like you're looking around, you're like, wow, because we've never seen the dwarves at their height. No, never. So
we've only seen it after it's been destroyed.
But so now thinking back to Gimli, who's like, these halls were filled with blah and blah. It's like, yeah,
they were.
This was a spectacular place. Even Elrond gave an exclamation in Elvish, which basically led to, wow.
Yeah, I think he said something like, amazing, or something like that.
It was some sort of exclamation of because, like, wow.
Because we learned later he hadn't been there for 20 years.
Which, again, I think it was longer than
No, he said, it's been 20 years since I was here last, is what he said to Durin when he's leaving.
But that line clinched that whole scene for me. So yeah,
that even an elf.
We get the dwarves breaking the rocks. I'm like, okay, classic dwarves, and we get the dwarves like cheering on Durin, and they're like,
Khazad,
Kaza, Doom.
I love it.
Yeah, so good.
But when they're going in, the ingenuity of the dwarves and who they like with their when they're doing their sunlight thing, they're moving the sunlight through the caverns to get it to their cultivation
they have
fields.
greenery in there, so they're providing light.
So many times, video games, TV shows, movies, if they do anything dwarven, it's dark and dim and dingy. It's all rock. But this was vibrant and alive, and there was golds and greens and reds, and I was like, this is beautiful.
Yeah. And
it may not be the white soaring arches of the elves,
but
it was something beautiful in and of its own.
I can't wait. I really hope that the dwarves can like blow away Celebrimbor, where he's like, dwarves and their crafts, they don't even know, and then they come in and they make something. He's like, all right, fine, you guys are good.
Remember, he does have respect for them as fellow craftsmen. He alludes to it as they're going up to it, but I still think most elves kind of are like, yeah, but you're still a little bit less than us.
Well, that's elves in general. Like that's even how they see themselves as the protectors of all, which is why like the humans are just like, can you just leave already?
Yeah, like you've been here for 79 years protecting this town because their ancestors supported Morgoth. It's like 79 years is 3 generations.
For humans, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
if we're going like every 20 years, there's been 3, maybe even 4 generations
and that's
gone.
a part of the problem, but also a part of Galadriel's story, right? Is elves don't really move on.
No.
Like,
they don't.
And so humans who are like, dude, this was 1,000 years ago.
Yes, I remember it like it was yesterday.
And they're like, yeah, I know, I was there. It's like, great, well, for us, nope. Like, we don't care.
So anyway, back to the dwarves, though, because
the dwarves are great.
The whole Elrond and Durin thing was absolutely my favorite.
So, yeah, the breaking the rocks, and then he escorts him out.
Yeah. So,
he escorts him out, but hold on. He escorts him out, and that escorting him out was what clinched the whole scene for me. Mm-hmm. Disa just kind of added on to it, which made it even better. But him escorting him out because...
So you missed it, though. He did give him a little nod.
I did miss it. But him escorting him out on the elevator, that talk...
The elevator was awesome.
It was so... again, another example, this would probably be my third favorite scene, is the elevator scene. Because Tolkien has such an interesting world. Mm-hmm. And he provides you with these different characters, but he doesn't go into what it would really mean for these characters to interact. Mm-hmm. Because elves essentially live forever.
Yeah, they before the trees fell and they went to Middle Earth, they had no word for death.
Yeah.
It didn't exist for them.
And dwarves, they live a long time, but not as long as elves.
No.
Humans, human lifetime, and we haven't gotten to them yet, but Númenóreans, they live an extra long lifetime. I think equal-ish to about dwarves. Okay. But anyway, the elevator talk was good because he's like, yeah, it was 20 years ago I was here. Yes, 20 years. I've lived a lifetime. I've had two children.
You didn't show up to my wedding.
And you didn't even come by, which I imagine he probably sent him notice, right? Like, hey, but to an elf, he's like, oh, 20 years, that's the blink of an eye, that's next weekend, whatever.
Yeah.
But not to everybody else. You might think this is a blink of an eye, but to everyone else, we've gone, like, almost the humans, right? We've gone on with our lives.
Yeah. That, him putting off going to see somebody for 20 years is us putting it off until tomorrow. Like, because Elrond's like, I don't understand what's wrong. What did I do wrong? He's like, you missed everything, and you are coming here and saying you are my friend. You expect to be able to just come in and ask anything of me. This is wrong. And Elrond's, you could even see it on Elrond's face. He's like,
I think he realized.
Oh.
But at the same time, his response was perfect.
I loved it.
It was, put his hand
Yeah,
on his
what do you
shoulders
have
like,
to say to
what do you
that?
have to say to that? Congratulations.
Yes.
Which-
it wasn't, I'm sorry.
I know some people have a problem with Elrond being described as a politician.
Mm.
I think partly because politician nowadays has such a negative connotation.
Mm-hmm.
But I take politician just to be, he's good with words. He's good at convincing people.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily a bad person or manipulative, but we've seen that in the way that he writes the speeches for Gil-galad. He has these conversations with Galadriel.
He knows the words that resonate.
He knows the words that'll speak to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that people be a dwarven people or his own people, he knows what to say. And so,
yeah,
it was so good.
Congratulations on your wife and your 2 children.
And then we get to
I should very much like to meet them.
the Disa scene where he swings the door open. All right, here it is. This is my home, but you're not staying long, and you're definitely not staying for dinner.
Yeah, yeah. And Disa.
Yeah.
Oh, I adore Disa.
So the whole thing was great.
She comes in. Is that Elrond?
Yeah. Which means he's been talking about it. I've got an elvish friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because he's even like, I'm mad at you. But clearly he's been talking about Elrond in a loving, familiar way.
Planted the tree and cared for it as if it was their
third child.
So good. But also...
And the 2 little whippersnappers is like, told you to stop playing with my heads.
So clearly... Yeah, that was great. Clearly, Durin understands the significance of the tree.
Yeah.
That tree, that sapling, came from...
The Great Tree.
Arondir? No.
Lindor, the Great Tree of Lindor.
The golden-leafed trees.
Yeah.
Which they don't just pass out.
But it's the golden leaf tree.
Yeah.
Because there's two different golden leaf trees. You have kind of the more birchy ones, but then you have like the great tree that has those more tri-point leaves.
Yes, but those trees are those saplings are eventually given out to different places.
Yeah. Well, and even seeds of them are given to Sam at the end of their adventure.
To plant in the Shire.
Yeah.
Which came from Rivendell,
Mm-hmm.
and the ones from Rivendell came from the Linden, whatever they're
well,
called.
because it was one of the gifts that Galadriel gives out at the end of their adventure.
Yeah.
She gives Sam the seeds, and they're like, it's like a bunch of them. It's a bunch of seeds, but then also a bunch of the dirt specifically. And so he sprinkled one piece of dirt in with like every seed and all over their shire so that it could regrow because it had been destroyed. Anyway,
yeah,
I did a little bit of a deep dive.
But so I think Durin understands this is an important thing, and he cared for it as if it was an important thing. And I think when Elrond turns, he's like, "Oh,
You kept
my
the
tree." Because I do think elves think of dwarves like, you guys are good with tools. You can mine the mines.
You got your rocks,
but you
and
guys aren't
stuff.
sentimental. You're not like us. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
But and so he's like, oh, like you did. And so that whole scene was
yeah.
great. I love Disa changing his mind.
You're staying for dinner. No, he's not. Yes, he is. No, he's not. Yes, he is. And the look she gives him too when Elrond's like, all right, clearly I'm not wanted here. I'm leaving. And she goes, right at him, which is great because he's the prince. She's married into this royalty line. But you know who runs the house.
Their marriage story was great.
Yes.
And then the kids, buddy, boy, don't be playing with my head. Was also good. And then, so Elrond finally leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of the Durin/dwarves story is we see Durin the Third, his father.
Yep.
And Durin the Third seems to think that Elrond wants something.
Mm-hmm. Like, he's not just commissioning us to build a tower.
But not want something just like, oh, they want something from us. It's they want what we found. They must have heard. Those pointy-eared son of a guns must have heard that we found something. And we don't see what it is, but me and you both agree, we think it's Mithril.
Yes. Well, specifically, they even show them looking at a rock in one of the trailers, and
Yeah.
it's very silvery, lighty kind of stuff.
And others have, maybe that's the Hearthstone from the Hobbits, or I don't know, whatever.
I don't think we're gonna get into the Arkenstone.
The
We've already
Arkenstone,
done
yeah.
the Arkenstone.
I think it's Mithril, because Mithril will end up changing the world.
Khazad-dûm is the one that gets destroyed, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we see in the Peter Jackson films.
Yes.
Is that?
I think that's Khazad-dûm.
I'm pretty sure that's. So I mean, if they found Mithril, look it up. But if that is the same place they found Mithril, that would be their digging deeper. You know, which then leads them to the Balrog and all of that. So it would make sense that if it is Mithril, that is what leads to this destruction and stuff. It may not be. I'm probably pretty off because the location doesn't seem to fit. No?
Oh, no,
Yes?
they go...
Where do they go?
Oh, so they go through the mines of Moria.
Moria, not Khazad-dûm.
But Gimli insists that they shouldn't go through his old kingdom of Khazad-dûm.
He does?
In the movie, Gimli insists that they should pass through Moria,
Hmm.
and Balin would greet... Oh, yeah, Balin from...
Yeah. From The Hobbit.
Um,
Interesting.
I don't know. I'd have to do more of a deep dive.
Yeah.
But either way, Moria is one of the great cities, if not related to Khazad-dûm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Either way, the dwarves, just as a general sense, are so different than the Harfoots, which are so different than the elves, and we haven't gotten into humans, but I suspect humans are just going to be humans.
Yeah, we know what they're like.
And so then we have these four great races, which are basically what Tolkien messed with, which was humans, elves, dwarves, and
fairies.
And, fairies. And hobbits.
Yes.
Halflings.
Halflings.
But they all felt so distinct, so different.
Yes. Everything about each culture. So, while, Elrond is essentially freaking out of his mind because his, hero is in his presence...
Yeah.
It's a very reserved, fangirling. But if it was, Disa meeting, I don't know, Owly, or what, the creator of them, she'd be like, ah!
she would freak out.
So, it's fun, though, because, yes, that was hilarious. That made me crack up in a good way. It wasn't, anyway, I love that, we're getting to explore more of these cultures, though, because in the Peter Jackson...
Third Age, they're destroyed.
Yeah, but I mean, in the Peter Jackson films, we see the elves, and they're all very stoic, and they all look exactly the same.
Yes.
And even in the middle of battle, their faces are very, But, I said this to you, in the battle scene that you see, where Finrod is, fighting some orcs and stuff on that big old battlefield, there is panic and stress and fear, and I was like, thank you. Elves aren't unfeeling people.
They're just different.
They're just reserved.
Yeah.
And I was like, I thank you for making these creatures more understandable, if not even relatable.
Yes.
I have been able to understand and relate to almost every single one of these characters.
Which I think points to the two most important things I think any work of art needs. Character work and good writing. Mm-hmm. And we've seen both of them. The characters are relatable and understandable.
If you can do that...
It doesn't matter and nothing else matters.
Yeah.
It could have shoddy CGI, which I will say there are mixed scenes in this. Some of them look kind of corny. Some of them look really good.
When she jumps off the sword to stab at the troll, you can totally tell she's on wires because she kind of glides as opposed to arches.
Yeah. So some of it not, but the character work and the writing have been so good.
Yes.
And I think that's what's the most important. So is it perfect? No, not yet.
No.
But also, it could still get a perfect score. Now they just have to nail the rest of them and end it really well. Because we've talked about how we've loved things, but yes, 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 what the heck was that? Like, and they'll just end it terribly.
Okay, so honestly, I know like people hated like the Fantastic Four movie, the most recent one. It was actually pretty good until you get to the
stick.
Yeah, like it was pretty good until you get to the end when suddenly something happened to the budget.
Yeah, it was, and we've gone into movies where like we heard this was really bad.
Yeah,
and we're watching, we're like, we really like this, and then we'll get about halfway to 3/4 of the way in, and we're like, what is going on? We're like, okay, this is why everybody doesn't like it.
This is a solid start, though.
It is a very solid start.
Set a very reasonable bar while looking totally awesome. Yeah. This is easily an 8.5 for me, like 8.5, like not an 8 because that's like a B.
It pushes a 9 for me.
Yeah.
There are things, again, watching it a second time, it is a little slow.
I think that's just because you know what to expect.
I do know what to expect, but
because the first time we watched it, both of us were like, "That wasn't slow at all. That was perfectly Tolkien paced."
Yeah, but I'm trying to think also for the general audience.
Sure.
If you want people to stick with it, I think it should have been a smidge better. But I think it pays homage to the fans of the books.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't lean too heavy on previous stuff, so if you've never seen anything Tolkien, you don't have to.
Which brings up that question that you asked last night, was if this didn't have the Lord of the Rings in it as part of its title, so if this was just the Rings of Power, would you still watch it? My answer is yes. This is a solid fantasy story. You know exactly what is the mystery. Like, who is the bad guy? Who are the people that I should be rooting for? Far cry from the disaster of Wheel of Time.
So, okay, yeah, let's touch on that for just a minute.
Okay.
We won't spend a lot of time on it because neither of us liked it.
And I'm a big fan of the books.
You're a big fan of the books.
So.
I've only read a few of the books.
You've read like
1 through 4. I don't think I quite got through 5.
Yeah.
I got bored.
I think you started 5.
And so my sister and brother-in-law haven't read any of them, but they tried the show.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of us came out with the same response. We don't like the show. You didn't like it, I would say mostly because it wasn't very faithful. Like, they changed a lot of important stuff. We won't
sure,
get into
that. But even taking that out, I don't think I would have liked it anyway. Like, don't even talk about the fact that this is a book adaptation. I don't think I would have liked the show had it been its own thing.
But that's what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't like it for a mix of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But then my brother-in-law and sister didn't like it because they had no idea what was going on.
It doesn't tell a story.
It goes back to what I really like about this Lord of the Rings thing. So not harping too much on the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Is that this has great character work
mm-hmm.
and great writing.
Mm-hmm.
The Wheel of Time did not.
Mm-hmm.
The writing was like all over the place. We're like, that was bad dialogue. That was corny. Why
they
are
even
they
tried
going
to fill it in
here?
with those like behind the wheel things,
Yeah.
and that didn't help.
We didn't understand the story.
Yeah,
like,
and I read the books.
We know exactly what's going on in the Rings of Power.
Yes.
Now, granted, the Rings of Power has one giant advantage that the Wheel of Time did not. There's no written story for this.
True.
They get to make it all up.
This isn't so. The internet, though, let me tell you some of what the internet's been saying is they're like, read the Silmarillion and stuff like that, and the like tales and things and.
They don't have the rights to the Silmarillion, by the way.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, people are like, there's the background stories, the side stories that were written of the stuff before the Lord of the Rings Hobbit era and stuff like that, and they're like, this isn't doing faithful justice or anything to Tolkien, and it's so slow. And I'm like, are you guys expecting like this crazy explosive adventure with like high stakes from the very beginning? Because if so, then you don't understand how the Tolkien stories work.
But also, go back and watch the movies.
Nothing
really happens until about 40 minutes in.
Yeah.
Is when they finally leave the Shire.
Yeah.
Like, I might be exaggerating there a little bit, but it's pretty far in before anything truly happens.
And that's just the start of the adventure.
And
because then
take
it's
the extended versions and yeah. So.
And because I mean, it's then another how many tens of minutes until something truly dangerous happens, and it's really not even till like the third movie where they even get to like where they're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
So
to me, it's very Tolkien. Mm-hmm. It's good writing.
I think people these days want
better.
it now.
Oh, yeah.
Not better. They just want it now.
I think that's why binging is so popular, right?
Yes.
Is that we get all of it all at once. It's not economical for businesses, which is why we're seeing the downfall of binging. Mm-hmm. I actually prefer a mix. I like the drop of 3 episodes. 3 episodes a week.
Two is pretty good, though. These are 60-minute episodes.
2's not bad. I think 2 to 3 is
it depends
perfect.
on the length of the episode. If it's a 45-minute episode, then maybe 3.
But premieres are doing more of dropping multiple on a premiere.
Mm-hmm. It's like giving you a movie.
Yeah, but then they go back to dropping 1. Mm-hmm. There's been several shows, I can't name them off the top of my head. Amazon's fond of doing it, but they will drop 3 episodes at a time. Mm-hmm. I like that better. Mm-hmm. Like, I prefer the whole give it to me all at once, because then I can watch it at my own pace. But if you're not going to do that, 3 episodes. 1 a week is a little rough.
Yeah.
So...
What I would like it to be...
At least these episodes are long, I will say that.
They are
a full 60 minutes.
How many episodes are there going to be?
It's going to be 50-hour series, so if each episode is an hour, it's going to be 50 episodes.
Wait, seriously?
Mm-hmm. 50-hour series over 5 seasons. I think each season's going to be 10 episodes. 10
oh, okay.
8.
So... Okay. So they already know how many seasons they're going to do. They do. Okay.
And
so, here's my thing. Is we've talked about how shows will do fluff episodes. Unfortunately, Voltron, Defenders of the Universe...
Still so good.
Love the series. Don't get me wrong, but they had a lot of fluff episodes where I was like, we've got 2 episodes left in this season, and you've told me nothing. Yeah. So I would like... And because they were also like 8-episode seasons, right? So I would like it to be, give me 15-episode seasons over 5 weeks, but drop 3 episodes a week.
That would be great.
And because then I could be like, okay, I'm watching an episode today, and the next episode tomorrow, and like then I could even space it out and be like every 2 days I'm watching an episode, or something, or I can. But tell me how does it go? It's like 8-hour movie in one sitting? Heck no. But 8 episodes that are 1 hour long, I got this. Because there's something different about that.
But it comes down to planning.
Yeah.
And knowing your story.
Yeah.
And I understand the creation process, right? They don't know if they're going to get greenlit. Mm-hmm. They don't know. They're like, we did this first season and we hope that we get greenlit. Just make good stuff. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about getting greenlit. And unfortunately, like, Netflix is notorious for canceling things. I think that might change in the future. But
yeah, they
won't
even
get into that now. But they've obviously planned out the Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. And it shows. Mm-hmm. I want more shows to plan it out. Put in the front work. And I know that you might not get a second season. Yes, you might get canceled. But I think that is your best bet of sticking around. Because it shows. People know when you're full of crap. Like, people can smell, like, I don't think they have a plan for this character. So,
Legend of Korra. Every season, they thought they were going to be canceled. And so there was just always these weird wrap-ups, but then they're like, just kidding, you have another season, so then they had to come up with this new cliffhanger. Yeah. One of my new favorite shows, Hilda, funnily enough, I actually feel like they worked out the entire story from start to the end of the movie.
You can tell. I haven't watched Hilda, but you can tell when you watch a show.
Things from the first episode relate to something that happens in the movie, and you're like, oh my gosh, they've been setting this up from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Or the way these characters are doing something, and I love that. And I want that to be in the show. I love the foreshadowing. I love the connections.
Because
fans like to pick these things out.
A casual watcher might miss it, but
Mm-hmm.
fans are like, I was paying attention. I totally get that reference.
Yes.
It becomes Captain America.
I get that reference.
And so even there's been so many shows that we've talked about that do this. Well, they're self-referential. They'll go back to the other episodes. We're like,
Because
oh,
they're telling a
'cause they're telling a
story.
Yeah.
Even Phineas and Ferb, which is an
Phineas and Ferb,
episodic show that's really everything's wrapped up in 20 minutes, they still have a through story.
For the characters, yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so overall, really enjoying the Lord of the Rings. You guys will see more of us doing more talking about episodes.
Anything to say about like when she got on the
Oh.
raft or whatever from the people who had been
Yeah,
attacked
there are
by
a
the
few,
giant
there are a few more
worm?
things we should probably talk about. So, the raft, fine. I don't have much to say on that. I mean, obviously she's met Hellbrand and they run into a ship at the end, which is going to be the Numenorians.
I kind of feel like he picked up Galadriel again as just like a convenience thing, not because he actually wanted to. It was probably more like, if I need to sacrifice another person, at least I have you. Because he sacrificed the entire raft of other people.
I don't know, because he jumped in after her, so which is the opposite
Yeah,
of
but
convenience.
watching somebody drown is different than, cutting a
he
calf and leaving them
didn't go
for the
He
zombies.
didn't go after everybody else.
They were dead. They were eaten.
I don't know. I don't agree with that. But the other thing we should probably talk about is Meteor Man.
Yes. Because, okay, so end of first episode, Meteor Man
Shows up.
and we see Nori and Poppy going up to see, what the heck's going on.
He has a thing about fire.
Yes. So episode 2, Nori goes up to, kind of, gets closer and, touches him. He's like, ah! He, freaks out. And then the fire all rushes into him from the meteor landing.
And he passes out, and then the fire
comes back out. Her and Poppy work together to, take him out of there and go hide him. And then Nori proceeds to, tend to him the next day. He is speaking in a different language. It's not quite Quenya, which is what the elves are speaking. But it's in the subtitles. It's just written as ancient language.
So, Nerd of the Rings, great channel, by the way.
Yes.
He was discussing with people in his Discord or whatever, and they tried to figure out what he was saying when he first lands, right?
Sure.
And the closest they think it has come down to is Hand of Flame. So he says, mana and fury, or I don't know, something. I don't remember the words, but they think it comes down to Hand of Flame, which they then think references Sauron. So a little bit of theory time.
Okay.
Sauron, we think his symbol is. We've seen this on the internet in multiple places. We think it is kind of a map. We think it is the symbol of Mordor. We think it is the hills and the mountain, and we think it represents Mordor. That being said, this Meteor Man looking for Sauron is going to be one of the other. It's going to be good or bad, right? He's not going to be somewhere in between. He's going to be good or bad. The music, the tone, everything, I think leans towards bad. Which makes it kind of weird where Nori's like, I feel like I'm supposed to be helping you. Don't know what that's all about.
He's interesting, though. So not only did he somehow, pull the fire, it seemed to, go into him, not just be extinguished, because then it very clearly rushed back out. But then also when he freaks out when she shows up again, and he's screaming at her.
The trees
were bending in, almost enclosing the area, and the clouds were responding too. He's very elemental.
Internet things I've seen. The whole trees bending in, people are relating that to Gandalf. That's one of the big theories going around, is that it's Gandalf. When he's in the house with Bilbo, it's Frodo's like, Frodo Baggins, and then the house kind of
Do not mistake me for a conjurer of cheap tricks.
Yeah. So I see that. I understand the similarities.
I think it's a red herring.
I hope so.
If it's not, I'm gonna actually be a little bit upset.
I don't want it to be Gandalf. Please don't let it be Gandalf.
So yes and no. I don't want it to be Gandalf because then it becomes his show.
Yeah.
But I like Gandalf. If it is Gandalf, I'll be marginally upset.
We already have characters.
I know.
I don't like it because then it becomes a cameo show. Look at this person I know. Look at that person I know.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't want it. I want it to be somebody new. We already have the characters we know. We have Elrond. We have Galadriel.
But he keeps doing very Gandalf-y things, which
so Gandalf
could be a wizard thing.
Could. So that's I have two hopes. If it's not Gandalf, which please don't let it be Gandalf. # don't let it be Gandalf. We need to start that movement.
That's not going to change the show.
It won't, but a man can hope. So my first and lesser hope is if it's not Gandalf, let it be a blue wizard. This is also mentioned by Nerd of the Rings and by other people online because we don't know the blue wizards.
Yeah, we really just know the browns and then the gray and
then
the white.
But there's supposed to be 2 blues. We really don't know much about them. There's like a throwaway line. They went like even further to the east or something like that. I don't know. I'd be okay with that. If it's a different wizard, cool. And maybe he's there to try and stop Sauron, also cool.
Yeah.
I'd be down for that. My second, but I kind of want this one. I haven't. I think Nerd of the Rings might have thrown this one out there, but I want to say I thought of it first. Is I hope, fingers crossed, that Meteor Man. So another reason people think is Gandalf, because Gandalf has a thing with fire. It's like his element. I don't like if he has to bend an element, it's fire. I can't remember why. It's in the Tolkien lore, but he has a thing with fire, that's why, anyway.
And the fireflies and stuff.
But that's also why Tolkien. That's why Gandalf can take on a Balrog.
Tolkien can too.
I want it to be a Balrog.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Balrogs in the movies, giant beast. We even see them in one of the trailers at the very end, and it looks very like the movie. But Balrogs are not that. That's just kind of the movie depiction of them. They actually are, I'm going to say people. They're not really people. They're creatures like elves, as if elves are creatures, but elves are...
But he doesn't have pointy ears.
He doesn't yes, but I'm saying he is a creature
Yes.
if we were to call an elf a creature.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
But an elf is not a creature, an elf is a person.
So, race.
Sure.
Okay.
Balrogs are a race of some kind.
Sure.
But they are generals to Morgoth. I want to see that. I want a Balrog to be like, yeah, no, Sauron, I'm in charge. I want that power struggle. Well, like we talked about in the beginning, I want Sauron to be like, yeah, you don't understand what I'm doing here. And so we have like these multiple opposing forces, and then maybe he can kind of showcase who he truly is, right? A being of flame and smoke, which is how they're described in the Lord of the Rings, right? He is so malicious, it's as if he was a being of flame and smoke. It's not that he was of flame and smoke.
So, thinking about it, like, there's been plenty of times where in magic creatures, they can appear, obviously, differently.
Yeah, so I'm hoping there's, like, a transformation, right?
Yes. So Sauron, specifically, I mean, he's got his fair form.
Yep.
But he's, he's kind of dark and
he always wears armor.
Yeah.
I always dress in black.
Yeah. Very, very dark gray.
Very dark gray.
And so I could see it being that, like, the Balrogs have a bit of that, too. I mean, they were part of Morgoth's army as well. Like, there's no reason that they can't have something similar to that. But he's like, don't know English, so I'm just gonna kind of scream at you.
Yeah. It was so good. But that's my hope. I hope he's a Balrog.
Yeah, so I'm wondering the star formation that he showed, Poppy and Nori. Like I'm curious if
See, I'm
like where will that end up being?
I don't know. So another reason I think he's more malicious than good.
Mm-hmm.
So Gandalf on the good side.
Mm-hmm.
Blue Wizard, good side.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's on the malicious side, which makes me lean towards Balrog. One, music, scene, tone, everything. Fire, which generally tends to lead towards malicious. The other thing is, if Lord of the Rings is right, Hand of Fire, he's searching for Sauron. You generally don't seek out evil.
No.
Now technically Galadriel is, so it's not a strong argument, but I'm going with that.
Her Finrod basically told her to, though.
But that's true. But my last argument for that is when he did magic, he spoke to the fireflies.
Mm-hmm.
They died.
Yeah, when he grew weak, so did they.
I don't think that would be a blue wizard thing. In fact, I'm fairly certain blue wizards heal and things like that.
To connect his life force to these creatures. Like, even Poppy was like, ah. And it's like, they're just fireflies.
But the way it was shot and shown,
mm-hmm.
it looks as if, like, this is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so I think he's a bad guy. I'm going Balrog.
Sure.
I'm putting my chips down on that. But I also, if he is, that's what I want. That would be great.
And then there's no reason we can't have the Peter Jackson-y Balrogs. Like,
when he transforms, yeah.
Yeah. And like that, because that's how he would appear then in his final form, so to speak.
Last thing.
Sure.
It's a minor thing, but we should probably talk about it because it's kind of in the show.
Okay.
But it's my least favorite element, even though it surrounds something cool.
Okay.
We should talk about the sword. So, I don't like the kid. The kid irritates the crap out of me.
I know why. At least for me. He's one of those, like, monk-looking people. Like, I've never... He's got one of those faces and the haircut of, like, just this, like, monk kind of thing.
It's the attitude. It's the attitude where it's like, man, I just
teenager.
want to slap this kid upside. Yeah, but to me, so is Nori. But I actually like Nori.
Yeah.
And, I'm trying to think if we've seen other teenager-esque characters in the show. I don't really think so.
Some snot-nosed
elvish
elvish
man, yeah,
kids.
he just irritates me. I did not like the kid. And
I think maybe it's probably some of the prejudice, that they all have against elves as well. Like, the humans are like, you're blah, 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 blah.
So, I will say this is something they're obviously trying to hide, but doing so poorly, but also not like this is, to me, this is the weakest element of the show, is the sword. One, they give it to the kid. My least favorite, most hated character on the show so far. Like, I actually genuinely don't like him.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, I'm not gonna like you. Yeah. And then his mom leaves with the elf Arondir.
And her name is Bronwyn.
I'll get it right on episode 8.
Okay.
And the second he leaves, it immediately cuts to him and his friend running to a house.
Not even a great friend either. Like, he would be I don't know. I wonder if he's maybe like, okay, that's the cool kid, because that one who was with him was the one who was like, shut up, pointy ears, to Arondir at the bar.
Yeah, and they're just like hanging out, like, oh, and they just say he or him. They don't say who, like whose house they're in. Mm-hmm. It's all super vague, and he's like, yeah, I found it one time when I accidentally stepped on the right board.
Yeah.
And he's like, ooh, he's got like a ton of stuff in there.
He's like, yeah, but this is the best.
This is the true treasure. Okay, first of all, how do you know the sword's important?
Mm-hmm. Well, kids at farms are always depicted as being like, they find dad's sword and it's like, ooh, this is cool.
Yeah. they're nosy, they get into trouble because there's nothing else to do, you're from a small town. I understand that. This was just, it was either rushed or, I don't know, but I didn't like how this was portrayed. And they didn't go through any of the rest of his stuff. They didn't take any of the rest of his stuff. In fact, the friend runs away because they, like, hear something.
Yeah.
But the kid just, like, stays there.
Yeah, he's like, go, go, go.
He's like, you go. I'm going to stare at this for a little bit.
Stays there.
Like, it just, I'm like, what? I was like, I get it. It's an important sword. It belongs to Sauron because it's got, like, the symbol on it.
Yep.
Like, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I did find it very neat, though, when he has the sword in episode 2. He stabs the orc, he's bleeding, and his blood flows up towards the blade.
So I wonder if he maybe wasn't holding it like this, and so it kind of went down.
Maybe.
But I prefer the idea of it being him holding it like this, and it was pulling his blood toward it. Like, that feels very...
And it was, like, reassembling, which was really cool.
Yes, you could see it reforming, and it was pulling, like, shadows and darkness
like
from
out
around.
Of unseen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was, you could see it getting noticeably larger. I wonder, I'm pretty sure what happens is that he wrapped it back up or whatever and then put it in his pack. Because if it was the full sword, where the heck did he hide it?
I don't think it was the full sword. I think it's going to take more blood.
But either that or, he broke the connection so it went back to the way it was before. So then he could put it back into his pack. But it may have only partially reformed because he broke the connection or whatever, he stopped touching it. But we also see from one of the trailers, he now has that mark too on his arm.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the guy, he's like, have you heard the name Sauron?
Well, so...
Like, grabs his arm.
Yeah, so, obviously the town has a strong connection to Morgoth, or loyalty, or whatever.
Yeah,
and
so 80 years ago.
Well, it was 1,000 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
It's
No,
just,
they'd just been there for 80
he had
years.
been there
Yeah.
80 years.
Yeah, okay.
But, I'm not sure. I don't know. So there's a sword in Tolkien mythology that, like, thirsts for blood. Kind of reminds me of Sword Nimmy.
You want to go out and destroy some evil today?
Yeah, Night Blood from Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight. But there's often swords like this in mythology. I mean, he wasn't the first, wasn't the last. But an evil sword that, like, thirsts for blood and kind of reassembles itself. There's a sword like that in Lord of the Rings mythology, and I think this is meant to take its place. Anyway, that being said, I hate the kid. I hope the sword leaves the kid.
You struggle with
actors.
Typical teenage
I do. Like,
characters, though.
If it's a teenage character, I'm usually out. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I hope it leaves the kid. I know the internet is abuzz about who is Sauron. Is it this character? Is it that character? I don't think we've seen Sauron yet.
Mm-mm. And it's not going to be the guy who looks like Eminem.
And it is not going to be the guy who looks like Eminem. I 100% doubt that.
Yeah.
I don't think the sword or the symbol technically belongs to Sauron. Maybe.
It does kind of look like a sideways M.
I think it belongs. I think it belongs to Morgoth. I think the symbol is of Mordor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a map I'll show you when we're done.
But I think there's going to be a power struggle with Sauron, with the Balrogs and the world, etc., etc. I think we're going to see why Sauron is so bad,
Mm-hmm.
He's like, no, I am the heir apparent. Let me show you why.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as he starts to collect things from Morgoth, he gets Mordor. He gets the sword.
Mm-hmm.
And he discovers a power from the unseen world.
Mm-hmm.
And just to clinch and put the cherry on top, I forged the one freaking ring. I think that's Sauron's arc.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to be like, oh yeah, he's bad.
Yeah, this is how it happened.
And so then, like, when we get these players who come in, when we get Eminem trying to take down Sauron, when we get this Balrog coming in trying to be like, no, I'm taking over, I think we're going to see Sauron just be like, no, me.
Yeah.
And
Thinking of the fight, by the way, in Shadow of Mordor, where he literally does this kind of like smacks you, because you play as Talion and you're fighting him at the end, and he like smacks you like across the screen. I'm like, yeah, that's how it would go.
And so the whole game of Shadow of Mordor builds up to, I'm gonna get my revenge, and Celebrimbor's gonna help me as a ghost who's possessing my body.
Great ending, by the way.
And and spoilers, but the game's been out for a while. Eventually you do get to battle Sauron, and you're built to be this powerful, awesome person, and yes, we know how the story goes, because
you obviously can't win.
You obviously can't win. But man, your defeat is glorious.
Yes.
And there's a slight twist at the end, but Sauron comes in and just smacks you around. It's like, did you really think you could take me down?
It's a David and Goliath, but David lost.
But but that's if you believed David also had the power of God, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's like, David has the power of God. I bet he wins this battle against Goliath. And then you see Goliath come in and just smack him around, and be like, well, guess that power didn't do him any good.
Yeah.
It was a great ending to a game.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping we have that same build-up, because as much of this show is Galadriel's story, I mean, let's be honest, she's the main character. We're going to see her arc.
But, I mean, we also know
it is actually the rise of Sauron. It is his story.
It's the Rings of Power. That's the title.
Yep.
It's not Galadriel.
And who forges the rings? Technically is Celebrimbor, but under the guise / distraction / hoodwinkedness and whispering murmurs of Sauron.
Yep.
This is Sauron's show. Let's not be distracted by that.
Yep.
Like, Galadriel, I think, is just the lens to show us what the arc that Sauron goes on.
Yep. Well, because we also know, in the end, Galadriel doesn't necessarily win.
She doesn't win or die.
She stays in Middle-earth. She's banished, so to speak, from even being able to pass on to the West.
I mean, she does later at the end of Lord of the Rings, but
yes, but that's because she realizes, I can now, like, because she's like, I resisted the pull of the ring, and I chose to not take it. I am free to move on.
Yeah. So I think the show has a lot to do.
There will be some wins. Don't get me wrong. There will be some wins here and there. There's going to be loads of story that we don't know, and I'm excited for that.
Well, so
But the overarching... The bad guy's not going to lose.
But, so... I'm so excited for this show. We know exactly how it ends, which is the perfect ending to lead into Lord of the Rings. The ending of this show is the beginning of the Lord of the Rings. That battle where Sauron loses the ring. Where we have Elrond and who's the human king? Isildur, thank you. Who will be in this show? Standing at the mouth of Mordor. So they figure out how to get into Mordor. So they're gonna figure out that this symbol means go to Mordor.
Yep.
And he's gonna be like, okay, throw it in, my friend.
And Isildur's like,
keep
nah.
It. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Watch the movies. Like, this... Oh, my goodness. I'm so excited.
Yes. So yes to all of those points. But remember, the
show will place it as, we won. We defeated Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
End of show.
But Isildur has the ring.
But then we pick up with the movies where Isildur has the ring, and we see Elrond and him, and then we're just like, oh!
So, the Star Wars movie, it wasn't Solo, it was,
Rogue One.
Rogue One, thank you. Yeah, we know how that ended. We know they get the Death Star plans, and we know those Death Star plans get to Leia.
Yep.
We didn't know anything else, though.
But
they all died.
But it ends exactly how A New Hope begins.
And that was awesome. I love that. But they all died.
But from also a different point of view, right? We get the awesome, incredible Darth Vader hallway scene.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun,
And
dun,
he
dun,
just
dun.
tears people apart. I think if nothing else, that was an inspiration. It's like, we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But from everyone else's point of view.
If we can get the full 50 hours that they have planned.
Oh, I think they spent so much money on this. They're like, we have to.
And honestly, all of these comments that are on the internet, those literally don't matter. What the people are saying on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, what they say doesn't matter. It comes down to the views and the rewatchability of the show. I will probably have this on as background noise
already
just to
watched
try
the first
and push
episode
it.
once, and we mentioned at the beginning, I don't rewatch stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yes, already the show is great. It has rewatchability for me. I think it has so much potential it can live up to, and if it does, will go down as possibly one of my favorite shows of all time.
I can actually see it being that if they can continue the next 8 episodes in similar fashion to how good these first 2 episodes are, it will just continue to have the views.
Yeah.
Like, we were talking the other day about, we've never seen this, by the way, guys, Game of Thrones, but we were talking the other day about Game of Thrones and its popularity, and how, it's just grown more and more and more and more popular,
It's
and
impressive.
now House of the Dragon, its first episode was like the most watched thing.
Yeah,
Like,
so Game of Thrones is the most watched thing ever,
yeah,
and House of Dragon trumped those numbers.
yes.
Which is so impressive. So good for it.
Yeah, no, so it's not a show I'm ever going to watch, but I can appreciate what it is doing for a television industry and what it's doing for
fantasy.
fans and fantasy. So good on them. Still never going to watch it. It's just not my thing. But funnily enough, because I love fantasy and I love dragons, everything's better with dragons, but I don't need the shockness that they do. But I can see the Rings of Power, if they can continue to do as good as they have done, and also continue to improve, it will be the next Game of Thrones, so to speak.
I would argue that in a way, if this accomplishes at least what I think it should accomplish, this show will become generational.
Oh, yeah.
Because already The Lord of the Rings is 25 years old, something like that. 20 years old. It's like came out in 2001. So what year are we in? 2022. So it's like 20 years old. And so already The Lord of the Rings
2001. Good job.
is 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen it, you've heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
You know it.
Yep.
You know somebody who likes it.
Yep.
And before then, you had the movies. Or the books, sorry. Before the movies, you had the books. And if you hadn't read it, you knew somebody who did. It was a required reading in some schools.
Yep.
And so, this is almost like a modern Star Wars, because Star Wars, unfortunately, has kind of gone like this. But, like, we had people who loved the books, and then we had the people who loved the movies. And then if this show goes on, and let's say each season takes about a year, right, to both produce and get out.
Sure.
So we'll say, 5 years from now, the show is finished. And then 20 years from then, we're still talking about it. So it's 25 years. That's 45 years of movies
2 generations.
to the end of when people are about now-ish talking about the show. 45 years. That is incredible.
Well,
That is absolutely phenomenal.
and not just that, like, generational in a way that it's like, I'm also okay with showing these to my kids. We have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yep.
And sure,
So far, there's only 2 episodes. We don't know how hard it's
so
gonna
far,
get. Yeah.
but that's pretty good for me, considering Amazon has not really ever put out anything that I'm like, I want to show my kids.
Stuff, yeah.
Not that this is necessarily child friendly, but it's not prohibitive.
Yeah.
It's intense in some places,
Much
but it's not gross.
Much
it's not
like the Lord of the
gory.
Rings. The Lord of the Rings is intense.
And that's what I was going to say.
But it's not, it doesn't have the things that would necessarily mean you don't want to take your kids to it.
Yeah, like,
So-
I'm fine with my 9-year-old watching this with us.
Yeah.
I'm fine with my 4-year-old seeing stuff because, I mean, she doesn't even pay attention half the time anyway. She's like, oh, what's that? Okay.
She liked the boat.
Yeah, she
She's
liked
like,
the boat. She's like,
"Ooh."
ooh. Yeah, like Galadriel's little boat when it started to open up
Yeah.
the sail. So, I mean, she's aware of things, but she's like, I'm not really interested in sitting around for an hour staring at this when I don't understand it.
Yeah.
But that's something I like is, you know, this and then like the Star Wars TV shows. I'm like, I can get my kids into these kinds of things. And
it
I
becomes
love that.
generational. It's,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
Fantasy.
More fantasy.
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson.
So, I guess that's our comments on the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
8.5 easy. Coming up on a 9 for the first 2 episodes.
I'd give you
Whether or not it was a Lord of the Rings show,
it's still good.
it is a solid 8.5 at the very least for me.
And if you have complaints, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody likes the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's fine. Like, I know a lot of people are like, it's too long. I don't want to do
think
it.
some people who are complaining about some of the stuff
Are just complaining.
are just complaining to
Yeah.
complain and don't like, I'm not a Tolkien professor. I don't know his life. I don't know his writings like the back
and
of my
I know
hand.
bits and pieces.
And yeah, I mean, I've watched some of the Nerd of the Rings stuff with you. I've watched some of the all of that kind of stuff. I'm a fan though. I am a huge fan and I love this. Like,
I'm a fan of good storytelling.
I don't think, like, this isn't an adaptation of anything, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
In no way does this seem disrespectful to
the material.
Tolkien.
Yep.
But people are like, it's so woke, and elves are supposed to be ethereal beauties and have long hair, and there's no black people. And I'm like, okay, well, first off, he didn't really ever specify skin color when it came to certain things. He's like, just have your imagination. Like, most of the people who were reading it happened to be white men. Sure, okay, whatever. So that's just kind of how it's portrayed. But also, guys, ethereal beauty humans don't exist.
But
And
also,
if they do, they're probably not actors.
It's like Santa Claus. You can imagine him whatever you want.
Yeah. Santa can be black, Santa can be Asian, Santa can be white. I don't care. Santa is Santa. Elves are elves.
Yep.
I like Arondir. I like him.
So far, he's been pretty good.
Yeah,
The whole cow order thing was kind of gross, but it was good.
Yeah, but I mean that was to
It was meant to be gross.
it was meant
but
to be
it was
gross.
still good.
But I like Arondir, and he's a short-haired black elf. So what? He's an elf. His skin color and his hair length does not change that. And again, I'm sorry, no ethereal beauty elven people exist. We're not gonna have anybody on the TV show who's the most beautiful creature you've ever seen on this planet. It's not gonna happen. So people need to get over that, because like so many comments are like, they're supposed to be the most gorgeous of everything. I'm like, guys,
I know.
these are humans with pointy ears.
You're more into the conversation on the internet than I am, so I don't see any of that. But
Yeah.
I enjoy the
people
show.
are giving the dumbest excuses.
That's all I need to know.
Yep. This
And
is a solid story
I hope it continues.
with relatable, believable characters. There's a baddie, there's a goodie, and it's fantasy. It's got swords and mythical creatures, and there's going to be dragonish type things, even though there's not dragons, probably.
We've already seen one.
No, we saw something that was more like
Oh.
what the Nazgul ride.
So you're talking about the opening war scene, right?
Yeah.
There is a scene where someone's coming over a hill, but you see a creature flying. Oh, it's when
Finrod's walking up the hill and we see the trees in the distance.
Nope.
Oh.
It's when Celebrimbor and
Elrond?
Elrond are walking to Khazad-dûm.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming over the hill right before they get to the door. It's a wide open shot of a valley, and you see a creature flying off in the distance.
It could have been one of the great eagles, though, because we've
That
seen
was
them.
not an eagle. It was.
Oh.
It is either a dragon or it was one of those Nazgûl rides.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called.
Hmm.
But I have a feeling we're gonna see dragons. So
I mean, everything's better with dragons.
it is better with dragons.
All right. I think that's good, though. I think I got out pretty much everything
Yeah.
I wanted to say.
Yeah, me too. I think it was good. That's all
But
I
I've
got.
noticed this, though. Like, I have thoughts and feelings on it. I just don't know where to start. I think that's what makes our conversation so good, and I'm glad that we are recording these because I want to go back and listen to it. All right. That is our reviews in the not dark for episodes.
In the light of
In
the
the
trees.
light. I can still feel the light of the trees on my face. Yeah, of episodes 1 and 2, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Bye.